Under the spectral glow of twin moons, the Vishari capital shimmered like a mirage of liquid silver, its needle-thin towers piercing the heavens. The air here did not merely carry oxygen. It was thick with the hum of 1,000 minds, a psychic tide ebbing and flowing through the streets, connecting every soul in a seamless, silent tapestry. Every soul, that is, except one. Zavara stood in the obsidian shadow of a monument, arms crossed, watching the synchronized ballet of her people. They moved as one, a collective consciousness that flowed like water, while she remained a stone in the stream, unmoved, untouched, uninvited. The scholars called it a neurological impairment. The people called it a curse. In our own world, we might call it isolation. That biting cold of standing in a crowded room where everyone speaks a language you were born forgetting. She told herself she didn't care, that the silence in her head was a fortress, not a prison. But in the quietest hours, she wondered what it felt like to never be truly alone. The rhythm of perfection was shattered not by a psychic ripple, but by the distinct, uneven clatter of boots. Elias Vance walked into the plaza with the grace of a landslide. His uniform was a war zone of creases, his hair a dark rebellion against order, and his gait suggested a man who regarded gravity as a mere suggestion. The Vishari recoiled, a collective wince rippling through their shared mind. Zavara watched, stunned, as the human beeline straight for her, the only other defect in the masterpiece. "Hey," Elias said, his voice a jarring acoustic sound in the telepathic quiet. "You look like you're about 5 seconds away from murdering someone. Thought I'd say hi before I made the list." Zavara blinked, disarmed by the sheer audacity of spoken words. "You're making a scene," she hissed, glancing at the glaring crowd. "They think you don't belong," she added, turning away. "You mean we don't belong," Elias corrected, his grin sharp. When she hesitated, he pressed on, not with mockery, but with a disarming curiosity. Against her better judgment, she confessed the truth of her existence. The failed bonds, the broken threads. She expected pity. Instead, Elias snorted. "That's dumb. They think you're lesser because you don't have what they have? That's like saying I'm a worse pilot because I don't have wings." He gestured to the sky. "Which, by the way, I don't." Before the weight of his absurdity could settle, the atmosphere shifted. The psychic tide receded, leaving a vacuum of dread. The High Council approached. The eldest, a figure of steel and silk, projected his voice into their minds. "You have been given an opportunity, Zavara." It was a trap wrapped in a gift. They were summoned to the council chamber, a suffocating shell of etched stone where futures were carved. Elias, leaning toward her, whispered, "So, just checking, do they always do the looming and ominous silence thing? Or is this a special occasion?" "Be quiet," Zavara snapped. "Not my strong suit." The council's proposal was as clinical as it was cruel. If Zavara could not bond with her own kind, perhaps she could serve as a bridge to the alien, an experimental neural interface, a forced connection. "So," Elias drawled, addressing the towering figures who viewed him as lab rat, "worst case scenario, my brain melts, right? There is a possibility of neural feedback destabilization," a counselor admitted. "You guys really need to work on your sales pitch." Zavara wanted to refuse, to deny them the satisfaction of using her brokenness, but Elias looked at her, and for the first time, she saw a mirror of her own defiance. "Great," he said. "Let's break some laws of biology." The interface was cold, the connection violent. It wasn't the elegant stream of Vishari thought. It was a plunge into freezing water. Zavara gasped as Elias's mind flooded hers. Not a river, but a hurricane. It was loud, fragmented, and chaotic. Memories of songs, the smell of ozone, a fleeting worry about a stove left on, a mental image of a spaceship shaped like a taco. "Why are there so many thoughts at once?" she demanded, clutching her head. "Welcome to being human," Elias's voice echoed in her skull. "It's messy." The days that followed were a study in disaster. They were trying to force a square peg into a round hole, attempting to discipline Elias's mental storm into Vishari silence. It was exhausting. During a training session, after Zavara was assaulted by a random memory of a catchy tune, she snapped, "Focus!" I am focusing on several things at once, Elias argued. Human brains are overstuffed filing cabinets. I can't just switch it off. It was Elias who finally broke the stalemate. We keep trying to make this a perfect mind meld. What if we stop fighting the chaos and use it? It was reckless. It was dangerous. It was exactly what they needed. They moved from meditation to movement. They tried dancing, which resulted in stepped-on toes and mutual glaring. They tried combat. The first match ended with Elias tripping over a stray thought. The second was Zavara distracted by his impulse to perform a spinning kick. But by the third, amidst the bruises and the bickering, something clicked. A rhythm found within the noise. The morning before their final judgment, Zavara stood watching the sunrise. The silence of her room no longer empty. She could feel him, a persistent, chaotic hum in the back of her mind. It wasn't seamless, but it was undeniably real. Elias found her there. Couldn't sleep? You were projecting dreams about food again. I hate you, she lied, feeling the warmth of a smile threaten her resolve. No, you don't. The council chamber awaited them, the air heavy with judgment. The eldest counselor looked down upon them with the weight of centuries. What you have done is not a bond. It is an aberration, a crude imitation. If you're mad, I'm not the perfect psychic boyfriend, Elias quipped. I've been disappointing people my whole life. Silence, the counselor commanded. The bond is sacred. Yours is imperfect. Zavara stepped forward. In the stories of old, this is where the hero seeks validation, begging to be accepted. But Zavara found she no longer craved the approval of those who had scorned her. It is messy, she declared, her voice ringing off the cold walls. But I am not lesser. The human mind is unrefined, yes, but it is not weak, and neither am I. She reached out, not with her mind, but with her hand. Elias took it without hesitation. The physical touch grounded them. A circuit closed against the world. You have chosen your path, the counselor intoned, the verdict falling like the blade of a guillotine. Exile. It should have been a death sentence. To be cut off from the Vishari was to cease to exist. Yet, as they walked out of the chamber, leaving the suffocating sanctity of the hive mind behind, Zavara felt lighter. So, Elias said, the cool night air hitting them as they stepped onto the skywalk. Got any plans? Personally, I think we should get a drink before we start this whole renegade exile thing. You want to celebrate? Zavara asked, incredulous. Damn right. We just told a psychic cult to shove it, and we won. We were exiled. Semantics. Elias grinned, hands behind his head, walking with that same maddening, beautiful arrogance. So, partner, do I get to pick the destination? If you say Space Casino, I will push you off this platform. Okay, yeah, it was going to be a space casino, but hear me out. Zavara sighed, striding toward the docking bay, suppressing the laughter bubbling in her chest. They were outcasts, wanderers in a galaxy that didn't understand them. But as the engines of their ship flared to life, casting them into the starlight, she realized the truth. The silence was gone. For the first time in her life, she wasn't alone. And that, she decided, was worth everything.